All right, what's up, everybody? We're doing the podcast on this channel here for right now. Rio will be joining us as soon as his work schedule could clear up. But for right now, we're going to be doing this in the interim. You guys know me, MK Tom Brady. I am joined by M2 Dave and Burrito Voorhees, who's like Prince, the artist formerly known as Forever King Jr., the artist formerly known as Franco. Now you guys know him as Burrito Voorhees, and we will be entertaining you this evening. So I'll introduce our host, moderator, so to speak, M2 Dave. Take it away.
Well, first of all, Tom, thank you for continuing the podcast, having me as well as Burrito Voorhees on your channel. I know people will be asking about Rio. He's just been working a lot. He has a strange schedule, so it's difficult for us to collaborate on a time. We've been working on it, and hopefully by the end of this year, maybe early next year, we can have Rio as well as Crimson back on. But at the moment, we're very happy to have Franco, aka Burrito Voorhees, aka King Jr. on the podcast. Franco, thank you so much for joining us.
Hell yeah, I'm always down to be on the podcast. You already know like how passionate I am about the game, so just giving my honest thoughts and just talk about it.
Well, my friend, speaking of honest thoughts, let's talk about the game and what you like about the game. And I know it sounds will be a bit strange to, to ask a question and answer it yourself, but if I may, please. Um, I like the game a lot. I like the gameplay. I think it's a massive improvement over MK11. The game to me is just very intuitive, right? Like you knock somebody down, you don't have to worry about 10 wake up options. You combo somebody, you don't have to worry about being comboed in return. Somebody gets a fatal blow, you don't have to hold down back for 10 seconds. So the game just overall, it's almost it's just strictly gameplay wise speaking, it's been a very positive experience, and it's been a massive improvement over MK11 in my opinion. Franco, what do you think?
Yeah, so definitely a big improvement from 11 in my opinion. Like there's more combos to do. There's more things to find. Like in MK11, I was doing the same optimal combos with Garrus for the longest time, like in the first maybe month or something. And, you know, a year or two later before I dropped the game completely, I was still doing the same combos because of how like dry the combo system options were. But in this game, like, I feel like I'm still finding stuff. There's tech to be found. There's things evolving. Like some characters might get written off as low tier, but then you see some stuff rise and stuff just gets found. There's just more dirt.
Tom?
I think it's a 1,000% improvement from where we're coming from. And obviously, I don't want to spend any time rehashing this. Mortal Kombat 11 is the worst fighting game in my lifetime. Um, for many reasons that we're not going to go into here. This game is a 1,000,000% improvement on that in every possible aspect. For one, the hand holding is toned down entirely. Uh, I love how every game has some sort of comeback mechanic. Fatal Blow kind of is the Mortal Kombat version of. I like how they incorporated it. In 11, I felt like there were 1,000 comeback mechanics: the ability to break away and still get combos on people, a sketchy wake up system, crushing blows, and then Fatal Blow. So I feel like things that are important, resource management, building meter, how characters play with and without meter, how you're going to handle certain situations, all that strategy that was missing that really adds to the complexity of a game is now first and foremost off the bat returned to the game. I do like the cameo system over the variation system. I feel like they have similar issues, but to me, the fact that a variation is locked to that one particular character, nobody else has access to those moves. Whereas the cameo system, everyone has access to those moves. So it's a huge improvement to it'd be like taking a good variation and telling every character in the game they have access to all those moves. That's kind of what the cameo system is. So it's a good way, and it also brings some of the nostalgia. A lot of the characters that couldn't make it to the main roster, some of them are obviously now cameo moves. So it's also very good just from an MK historian point of view, from a casual point of view, etc. The gameplay just has, like Burrito Voorhees brought up, just combo routes. A lot of people like that kind of stuff. There's a lot of things. It seems like every day there's a new combo being discovered. This was not the case in MK11. What you were doing combo wise in the first couple of weeks was probably what you did in the last couple of weeks. And there was really not much deviation for that. There's really no room for any of that kind of stuff. And overall, just the fun factor is there. Even though some of the stuff was considered quote unquote broken, it was still enjoyable. And I think that's the most important thing, that things can be somewhat unfair, but still significantly more fun than just doing down one and throw. So I think the game is a 1,000,000% improvement and the potential to replace MK9 as the greatest MK of all time in some of the NRS generation, and even those who are diehard UMK3, I think will replace that as well.
Yeah, you can't really discuss the game. You're right on the spot without discussing the cameo system, right? Because that's the signature aspect of the game, and it's just fun. Like, I'm not saying, obviously all the cameos are equal terms. We can talk about that later. But it's just, you go into practice mode. You want to try a different combo. You want to try a different setup with different cameos. Just today, I think Sonic Fox, they posted some interesting combos with Rain and Jax. You want to explore. You want to explore the setup. There's stuff to do. You feel like, hey, I actually have stuff to do. You play RoboCop at MK11. It's like there's nothing to lab. It's just like, no combos. The zoning is Neanderthal. Like it's very boring. I feel like with this game, it's kind of like the opposite. There's always something to do. You can lab with your secondary characters, with your tertiary characters. It's just a fun experience. Just the labbing, the testing, the experimentation that comes along with with these aspects.
Hold on, Dave. I don't mean to cut you off, but Crimson Shadow did just come available. Hold on. Let's go. All right, we got everybody here. All right. We only asked one question. You want to give it the floor to Crim here?
Yeah, of course. Crimson, thank you for joining. So again, for the guys who ask about Rio, it's a schedule, guys. There's no drama, and we hope to have Rio back soon. So in the meantime, we have Crimson. Crimson, thank you so much for joining us.
What's up, guys? What's going on?
All right. So we just started the podcast maybe 5 minutes ago. We were talking about some of the stuff that we enjoy about the game. Could you please comment?
Yeah, sure. I think this game combines a lot of things that people like from previous games, right? So, like there were things that everyone expressed that they really enjoyed about each game so far in the MK series, right? Starting with 9. 9, the thing that people talk about almost more than anything else was the movement, right? They're like, when are you guys going to bring dash blocking back, right? When are we going to get to move like we used to? Because that is one of the things that separates high level play from mid and lower level play, right? Is fine control over movement. So they brought that back. MKX, the thing that people talked about the most, love it or hate it, was the dirt, right? They're like, man, like all of the setups, the crazy offense and stuff like that, like when are we gonna get that back? And then, MK11, they took a lot of the crazy stuff out. One thing that one of the biggest changes that they made was they toned down those mids, right? MKX, as you guys know, and Dave, I know you love Trimmer. I know you love MKX, but the mids in that game were absolutely bananas. We're talking about like confirming into stuff from half screen with the run button to follow up and everything like that. So I felt they kind of tried to strike that balance in this game, right? You have the best of all worlds. You have the movement, which is a little bit more like MK9. You have some dirt and setups and things like that because of the cameos and also the way that some of these characters play. But it's not like overwhelming mids that dominate the entire screen and stuff like that. So you still get footsies, you get a lot of patience, like what we saw at ECT walking back and forth. You get micro ducking, things like that. So yeah, if I had to say what's my favorite thing about the game, I think it's the fact that they took things from the last few games and put them all together in one big package.
All right. By the way, Tom, your mic is echoing. Um, yeah, we were just also commenting on, how try not to, get into the people that stuff dislike too much about MK11 or MKX for that matter. But I think with this game, it feels like there's always stuff to do, right? There's like, you turn on the game, and I was just commenting on, Sonic Fox. They posted some stuff with Rain and Jax that I believe you also linked to on Twitter and Test Your Might. Like, there's always like stuff to do, right? You're like never bored. Like, I can go into right now. I can lab Rain with Jax, with Jax. I can lab Rain with Kano. Like, you feel like you're never bored. Whereas I think in the previous game, it's like, what do I do with Highborn Katana? What do I do with Robocop? There's nothing to do. There are no combos. The strategies are very, very simple. So you're gonna get bored very quickly, right? With this game, I don't feel like that's the case. I mean, are you guys bored with the game? I feel like I'm not. I have as much fun as I did on the first day.
I mean,
Franco?
Your mic wasn't echoing. I think there was just background noise, but
Okay.
that's all. That's all I was about to say for that.
yeah, I know in MK in the last game, people said they felt like they figured out how their character played within like 30 minutes of turning on the game. And so far, that doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, Franco, go ahead. Comment, please.
I might be biased because I'm like Garrus is probably like has the most depth in the game of all the characters, or one of the highest depths, like or skill ceilings. But like he's a combo machine, and it's like super awesome. Like you can just do so many different combo routes with him, and in my opinion, he's like the most flexible with all the cameos because the time freeze, like the temporal advantage, his main launcher, the 1 bar launcher, you can set up so many cameos because you freeze them, and like a lot of characters struggle to combo into Cyrax net because of how slow it is, or like strikers restand with the handcuffs. So like since he freezes you with his launcher, you can do combos that allow you to set up those slower cameos that most other characters wish they could use. So stuff like that is like really fun to use with Garrus, and there are some bad cameos with him, but mostly you can make like most of the cameos work in some way with him.
And
So that's
honestly,
just like really fun to
yeah.
have.
And I also want to say this, that the game has execution. Maybe for the first time in a long time. Like, I was trying to use Shang Tsung today for I was like, bruh, these hit confirms. I don't know how Franco was doing it to me, maybe like a month ago, but I don't think that shit was easy, man. Like, it was actually hard. Like, hit confirming a ground skull with another ground skull, especially like when they bounce sometimes back and forward. I don't know like which one to use. I thought it was hard, trying to like stand switch in between combos doesn't really feel natural, right? You have to like, you're like Yang Shang, you have to press like forward 4, and then you have to like press down, the stance, like switch. It didn't seem like it was something that's like intuitive, right? I'm not saying the game is, Tekken or King of Fighters, but there, there's that aspect as well that I think in the previous game was for many of the characters we had missing. So it's good to, again, be able to lab something, be able to test something, be able to experiment. Is such a fresh, what's the expression? It's such a, um, it's just very, very good, and I truly enjoyed the game for what it is. Um, but I feel like we do have to talk about the negative, which to me I'm almost exclusively um, related to like the quality of life stuff. And while I do want to rant about it, I want to bring Tom back into discussion and say, Tom, the quality of life stuff, man, we got to talk about it. Go ahead.
Um, as far as the quality of life stuff, there's some stuff that is kind of like, why isn't it in the
Sorry to tell you,
game?
breath of fresh air. I lost
Yeah,
my
breath of
thought.
fresh
Thank
air.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The quality of life stuff. There are things as far as like why is there no online practice and things like that. I mean, yeah, that's I question that as well. But really, in for people that don't understand, fighting games online were horrible, and we were led to believe that it was impossible to put a fighter online, and then Killer Instinct came out for Xbox One, and all of a sudden it was like, well, they can do it. And then every game really followed suit, and Mortal Kombat was the only game that was left in the dust. Well, they completely overhauled MKX, and the netcode got considerably better. But not much has changed from NetherRealm. And then people had a lot of complaints in MK11 about, some of the filters that were not available to us that are now being available in other games. And I just think the online experience is absolutely, I just think it's not very good. The rollback, even in MS that should be okay, 100, 115 MS, the rollback is very noticeable. I'm very surprised that it happens in that. No filtering from Wi-Fi, no filtering from high. You don't really want to play someone that's 149 MS, can't decline it, which it's a right there, ridiculous that you can't. And you don't have character rankings, you don't have individual character rankings, you don't have online practice mode while you're searching from one rank queue to the next. There's little quality of life things that I just don't understand, and really the online experience in general is below average. From it's great for if a fighting, this was 2015, but in 2023 it's below average. You hear Tekken Master tweeting every single day he can't get a single match that's not 200 MS because they don't even have servers in his region. I'm just very surprised. The game itself is very, very good, but the game online is a completely different story. And I think ranked is very important to get right because that is kind of where the pool of tournament players comes from. They start with ranked, it's tournament rules, first to three, so on and so forth. People gain the confidence or the experience in that to enter online tournaments, and then from the experience, then the confidence, then they go offline. It's a great way. But if playing the game that way is just a miserable experience, not enjoyable, you're just fighting the conditions or the frustration of that more so than actually playing. Tweety also spoke about this many, many times. Several players have spoke out about how the online experience is just not very pleasurable or enjoyable, I guess I should say. I'm just very surprised that it launched in that state. The game offline, I think, is first class. The online experience is not what I thought it would be.
Yeah, something that we have to, I think, mention is I think they fixed it somewhere in the patch. Like you play the game, especially lower levels, you have maybe some friends, some family, maybe you have children if you're older, and people yelling the N word, screaming gay slurs. I mean, and you can't silence this mid match. It's like I'm just trying to have fun. Why am I listening to this ignorant people? Well, I thought I was supposed to have fun with, it's supposed to be a learning experience, and it's just at one point, as you get higher ranks, it gets, thank God, it gets less and less, but it's so annoying, man. And I'm not at a stage where in my life, when I engage in toxicity, but it's like, man, oh man, can these people just shut up and play the game? And like Tom was saying, I don't think you can reject people until they have 150 or above ping. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's the number. And so you have a lot of these people play on Wi-Fi, which look, it's fine, but it's like I should have the option. I know they're never going to do this, but I should have the option to reject based on that. And in this game, you just don't have a choice. You're always forced to play, which Tom and I talked this privately, and I think with King Jr. as well, like the ping can be misleading sometimes, right? Because it might say, I don't know, 70 ping, and the other person is not wired while I am. But like when you play, it doesn't feel like that. So you play the game, what happens? You get hit by every word in the game. You can't react to anything. Here comes the smokes with their half-screen overheads. I don't know how the hell they're doing their combos, but it feels like playing a slideshow. And just today, I was ranting about it because I do think this needs to be random. It's just so annoying. Like, what am I losing to? Like stuff that I can't react to. It's just so frustrating. Crimson, what do you think? Are we right or wrong on this?
Yeah, so I think these are all valid points. By the way, I just wanted to say I like doing this with the chat here. I feel like it adds a whole other element, so that's cool.
True.
And hey, everyone. Yeah, so I think this is an area where MK has some growing up to do, and I think the story of the last decade or so has been growing up in different ways at different times, right? So we got to MK9. Before that, the games were fun, but they were crazy. And MK9 was an attempt to sort of grow up in terms of the meta and say, okay, we would like to be taken seriously as a first-rate fighting game, competitively. And so there was a lot of effort put towards that. And I think in large part, like the scene that we have today is a result of that. So again, as Tom mentioned in MKX netcode, NRS really kind of led the way there. You know, they got out ahead of a lot of these companies that have rollback now, and so the mid cycle said, okay, we can do this. Let's improve the internet and run a beta and stuff like that. And so now I think it's time for MK to grow up again in terms of the online experience. And here's the reason why: because most of these other games, especially the Japanese fighting games, have been refining and polishing their experience and the social aspects, not just the meta, but the social aspects of playing like Tekken and Street Fighter for years and years and years, right? Like Dave, you play Tekken, you know, they have all these crazy stats where, you know, you can go online and look up very detailed statistics about like, you know, how people play and wins and losses and stuff like that. And I know Street Fighter 6, you can like go back and replay matches and things like that from other people and stuff. So, you know, like this is an area in which the companies that are established have been doing it so well for so long that it is now time for NRS to rise up and meet that bar. And this is going to be a test. This was the longest development cycle we've had for a game in I don't know how long. And if they're going to be supporting MK1 over time, they actually have time to address a lot of this stuff. I know Ed said, you know, we have a lot of QOL stuff coming and we're committed to it. So this is the test. If they can rise to the occasion and add some of these features in, it could be great. And if not, I think they will always be compared to the rest of the Japanese fighting games that we all talk about.
Yes, before I let King Junior jump in, you're right, Crimson. He did mention that, and I do think the game in this aspect, not the gameplay aspect, feels rushed for sure. Which probably contributed to this. Like you said, Crimson. I compared this to Street Fighter 6 because that's the game that was previously playing, and that game's online. I mean, you talk about improvements. Capcom for Street Fighter 5, if you guys remember, they got massively grilled. I mean, oh my god, that game on release, what was it, $60-$65? But I don't think you had an arcade mode. It was so embarrassing, and they got massively grilled. They got spanked, and guess what? They made the right adjustments. They really, really, really did. And I think FIFA 6 for right now has the best online I've ever seen in any fighting game. It's fast. The interactions are fast. It does what it's supposed to. It makes you better, right? It makes you play these people. You get better. Obviously, it's not perfect, but that's kind of what I envisioned when I think online. Franco, your thoughts on the online system of this game?
I agree pretty much like everything, but I'll add a few more things. Like I'm probably haven't played Combat League as much as you or my brother, because my brother's level 100 and I think I'm 84 or something. I only had like one laggy opponent, like that was horrendous. It was a Shao Kahn player I fought, and I had to reverse 3 in their own connection. But um, one thing I wish that they would change about the online system is obviously the filter would be awesome. I wish you could change your controls mid set, like online, mid online training mode, King of the Hill, whatever it may be, just like in the character select screen. We've been asking for that since Injustice 2, I think, MK11. Um, that would be nice. And me being a Metafy coach, like I actually just had some sessions earlier today and a little before this phone call, this podcast. Um, they don't have online training mode available right now, and they don't have crossplay either. So like having a lot of those like practice online crossplay, it would just things that you would normally have at launch, we don't have at the moment. So like those are my
Yes,
biggest things.
yes.
And I wish you could change your character after losing a match in Combat League. I don't
Well,
like how
that's
your
another
character.
thing that's strange, and I'm sorry to interrupt you because again, I just keep thinking Street Fighter 6 when we talk about
But that
this,
goes
right?
back to the
Because
character rankings. It's like they do it that way,
yes,
but
yes,
there's no individual character rankings, even though Combat League is done by individual character a lot of times.
yeah. So for those of you guys, most of you people in the chat, I'm sure you play maybe you've played Street Fighter 6 a little bit, so you know that it's based on your rank is tied to your character. Uh, but the weird thing is, when you pick your character, you can switch the cameo, but you can't switch the character. Like you have to lose first, like lose the set first, and then you can go back. It's just a bit strange. I mean, I don't know. Again, I think there's a lot of stuff that needs to be addressed. Again, like Franco was saying, I think you're going to have to add maybe some kind of online practice mode. You're going to have to add maybe rank for each character, maybe not. I think my biggest request probably would be to be able to reject Wi-Fi players because I'm trying to learn the game. I'm trying to learn new characters. It's very, very difficult to learn when the game is lagging to that extent. Because it keeps lag spiking. And but I think when Crimson said, he referenced Ed Boon's tweet. I think all the stuff will eventually be fixed. To be fair to them, but people will obviously need to speak up. You know, obviously, don't flame people on Twitter. Just say what needs to be changed. Make reasonable comparisons. Between this game and Street Fighter 6, and I think the changes will eventually come. But I think where we may disagree here is we have to talk about this obviously, and it's the last patch. I'm going to leave it at
And let
that.
me just add in really quick. There's nothing wrong with
Go
not
ahead.
being able to switch characters because it prevents some of the counter picking. You pick your character beforehand, which is fine.
True.
But then those characters are also individually ranked because you're locked to the character in that set, and it gives you one without the other, which is just very strange. So we'll see what they add into the game.
Yeah, my issue with not being able to change characters, like I think it's cool that you have to pick a character to start with. Like I understand like the first character pick can lead to a counter pick war, which um like you're committing to your first game character. Like I'm gonna be locked on Garrus game one no matter what. But if I lose game one, I want to be able to switch my main character. That's my issue with the character select thing. Like I don't really care about the individual ranks of every character. And plus leveling up is really slow in this game anyways as it is, so like I haven't even maxed out Garrus yet. I'm like level 29 with him. I think my highest cameo level is 11 with like Cyrax or Kano.
And also one thing that I brought this up in MK11. I'm surprised they haven't looked into it, and it would help one of the problems. Once you reach the highest rank in Combat League, there's no reason, like there's no reward. Let's say you say, I'm going to get to 10,000 points this season. If you were able to earn like additional currency that you could use for stuff in the shop, so you could get that fatality without having to spend the money, for example, right? A way to like play the game and get that kind of stuff, like obviously casuals are always going to pay for it. But I mean, I wish there was just some way to kind of do that, so it's like now your progression totally stops. You're not earning any currency, you're not earning any gold, you're not earning any, you're done earning. I just wish that they would do something to just continue that and reward you for keep going even after you reach the highest rank. I think better incentives would also help.
Yeah, like maybe every like I saw like 10,000 was like is that's like the rank can go as high as 10,000 elo or whatever, so like maybe every I don't know 1,000 elo or something past Elder God, like you can get like 10,000 dragon crystals or something. I don't know, but yeah, I see what you're saying with like no rewards coming after hitting the highest rank.
Before we switch gears, Crimson, any last comments on this, just to give you an opportunity to for your last feedback on this topic?
Yeah, I think everyone had good things to say. So yeah, I think I would look at this as an opportunity. So far, in pretty much each of the last maybe 4 or 5 games, they've had to make a major overhaul to something about the game mid game. Now, a lot of times they've had to overhaul the meta, right? Like MKX went through a very extensive overhaul to get to where that game ended up at the end. However, this time I don't feel they need to overhaul the meta, right? I think the meta is fine. Balancing it is gonna be tricky, right? Like, Godspeed to the people who have to figure out how to make the cameos work for everyone, but not be too good for some people. So that's gonna be tricky. But I feel like they don't have to overhaul the meta. So, maybe there's room to focus on some of these improvements. And if they can do that over the game's life, yeah, I think we'll end up in a good place.
Yeah, I think they should focus on the quality of life changes too, to be fair. Like, I think they should focus on that stuff too first before the meta, in my opinion, at least. Like, unless there's something game breaking about the meta, which at the moment there isn't or seems to be nothing like that. I think they should just focus on the quality of life changes because that patch that dropped recently that struck us by surprise.
Well,
Yeah, we
let's
we
talk about that if we could. I think that's one thing that I think most of the disagreements on this podcast may come from the patch. I think everybody, for the most part, I think likes the game. People are playing it daily. There are tournaments daily. Rips Arena. I mean, I just watched one, 3 hours. There's always stuff to watch with this game. That's the beauty, right? You have a new game. People are excited. People like the game. But I think the controversy, especially on Twitter, I believe comes from the last patch. And I want to have Tom comment on the patch, and we'll go down the line. Tom.
Yeah, I mean, first thing I want to say about the patch is, uh, this wasn't a knee-jerk reaction to ECT. Like they can't just they didn't just go to the office Sunday night and say, okay, well, let's go ahead and make a patch real quick, right, and roll it out on Monday. This
Yeah,
patch,
please stress that because I don't think people
yes,
understand that. I think, oh my God, they watched ECT and then Lord
no,
Paula came to the office like
yeah, no, this
early
patch,
Monday morning and there's a patch. People, that's not
yeah,
how
this
it
patch
works.
was done and ready to roll out and had been approved by every whatever, and this patch had probably been approved quite a while. Could have been 3 weeks ago for all we know, and they just say, okay, well, ECT is coming out, we'll wait the day after, we'll roll it out. So we don't know exactly when this patch was prepared, submitted, etc. But I am a little disappointed with how they went about doing this. And I'm not sure if they just said, hey, you know what, we got a lot on the works right now. Let's just band-aid this for right now, and then we'll come back to it and change things up. So I don't really want to say that this is kind of like the way they're going in the game. This might have just been a quick fix, like, hey, let's get this done now and then we'll come back to it. But even with that, I mean, I don't like what they did with Cyrax. I feel like they could have. It's a cameo game, and removing the ability to use the cameo for that long of a time in what its main purpose was. I mean, like, first of all, like, it's obvious people want the if there's a cameo that everybody wants the same thing for their cameo. They want all my unsafe moves to be safe, moves that don't launch to launch, right? My armor moves to launch, and I want to keep my turn multiple times. And if one cameo does all that, it's naturally going to dominate. There were other smaller ways to do it, but Cyrax was the most effective. They could have done a number of things. They could have said, hey, the horizontal copter will change the hit reaction. It will no longer give you a combo. So all those armored launchers that are made safe, they may be safe, but they will no longer launch. It also takes away Storm Cell would no longer launch. They could have individually touched Storm Cell along with Cyrax and some of the damage scaling. And they could have fixed a bunch of other things rather than just say, you shall not pass, and just, you can't use them as much anymore. And then they also did some minor nerfs just to Goro, Serena, etc., only to say, oh, look, we punished these characters too. So it isn't just Cyrax. No, all the cameos took a small hit. And there was no reason to even hit them because they still do what they do and they seem pretty much unaffected despite getting certain changes. It was almost like that was like, hey, look, everything got touched. It was kind of like that sort of thing. And I really feel like they should have found a little different way to kind of change Cyrax rather than say you just can't do them as much. And I just feel like maybe try to raise the overall power level of the lower tier so that they can use cameos in a better way. Cyrax just happened to work because Cyrax loves long strings, good throws, and multiple hitting specials. So he complemented all those characters great. I guess if you look at the data, as Dave brought up, Cyrax by himself was picked more than every other cameo combined at ECT. Kung Lao by himself was picked more than every other cameo combined at ECT. And now it's just Kung Lao being picked by every other cameo more than times 10 every other cameo. It just and if you hit him into the ground, it's going to be next cameo up. So I hope they don't keep going this way, but it just seems like they're sticking with last character standing, last cameo standing, and I really hope that's not the case. And I would like to see things done a little. If it's a new era, make it a new era, and don't go back to making that same mistake.
Well, I think that's what people are concerned about. When I reference, I believe, Tweety, Dragon on Twitter, I'm sure many other respected tournament players in the community. That's kind of what people are scared of, is that, this is just going to nerf stuff. I mean, look, I'm usually against nerfs, but I'm sorry. Yeah, Raiden's damage needed to get nerfed. Maybe even some of Baraka's. I'm okay with those changes. I think one easy way to balance the game is the way Tekken does it. It's just, make some of the damage not entirely universal, but make it somewhat universal, right? So as when you play pre-patch, you play Reiko with I don't know, Striker. It's a strong team, but you do 32% per touch. Baraka hits you, does 50. It's going to be very, very, very difficult to make that match out work. You pretty much have to, pick a high tier. I feel like the damage, I think they got right. The Cyrax stuff, I'm sorry, was way over nerfed. It needed something, obviously, but I think it was way over nerfed. Now it has the cooldown of Reiko's kick, which, it just doesn't, to me, it doesn't make any sense. But I want to hear maybe a different perspective. Prism, go ahead.
Yeah. So to me, this wasn't really a balance patch. I think this was a statement about where the meta of the game needs to go. And I think the statement was, we give people all these cameos, all right, with all these different moves. There's a huge array of things in the game to do. We don't want the game to just be autopiloting strings into something super safe over and over and over again. And I think that's what this was about. You can argue whether it was too much or not. I think that's going to be subjective. But I think the overall statement is, it doesn't make sense to have a game with this much flexibility and creativity in it. But the obvious option to go to is the one that lets everyone not even think and just do this on block and keep doing it over and over again. And I think that's what the statement was. Other than that, if we compare this to first patches in previous games, there are no characters that super got the nerf bat here, right? Like the old style patching where that first patch comes out and a character that was broke is now unviable, right? We haven't really seen that. Pretty much the top tier is still the top tier, right? Rain, Sonic saying he might be, mid-high now or something like that, or whatever, instead of, super top tier, but still a good character. Johnny is still Johnny. Ashura is still Ashura. Raiden is probably still good, even though he can't do that much on a touch. And some of the biggest damage actually was out of Reiko with the Darius cameo, who could get up to I think Rewind hit someone for 69%, like almost 70% from one combo into Fatal Blow. So yeah, I can understand, it's always a pain to have your character nerf, but I don't look at this as a balance patch. I don't think anyone got nerfed all the way to the ground. And I think the first real balance patch is going to tell a lot more about where they want the game to go. But creativity-wise, I mean, you guys watched ECT. There were a lot of good matches, a lot of great, exciting things happened. But the number one comment when people got to the end was that they just didn't feel like the autopiloting into helicopter was exciting at all. So I think that is what's reflected in this patch, and we'll see where they go from here.
I agree with you. I think most people agree. That Raiden stuff was not fun to watch, and honestly, I almost, some of the
Yeah,
mirrors.
well, because with Raiden also, you would see like somebody get hit by 50%, and then you're like, okay, well, 50, that's a lot. What's the wake up scenario going to be? And he's like, oh, you get no wake up attack. I'm going to do Storm Cell that breaks armor, so you got to block it. And then I'm going to call Cyrax and I get my turn again. And it's like, wait a minute, he just lost 50. Why is it still the other guy's turn? So like, and there's no risk. So stuff like that made people be like, it's a bit much. So I do think they took care of that for now. And I do kind of agree with Krim that this is more of like a Band-Aid and not an actual balance patch. It's like, we're going to do this for now, but stay tuned.
Well, before I let Franco, I have to say that I don't look at, balance is actually a thing and it can be proven statistically. It's not some kind of, mystic force in the air. Like I watched this game a lot, and man, I've lost sleep. I don't work out as much as I do because of the stupid video game. But the point is,
Wait, Dave. The game ruined your life. Is that what
the
you're
game
trying
has
to
ruined my
say?
life, man. And that's what people say. Oh, Dave, you're just gonna
No,
trash the
I
game.
haven't
No,
slept
actually,
very
listen.
much
When I say I
either.
like
I'll
the
be
game, I
honest with
like the
you. I
game,
haven't
bro. I
slept
like
much
the
either.
game.
Yeah.
I like the game. But the point is, I watched the last 2-3 tournaments. One Cyrax, two at most, two Cyrax cameos to go from ECT where everybody used Cyrax to like 2 or 3. I'm talking about online tournaments, right? That's not balance. Like, what is that? That's not balance. Look, you can say, look, that stuff had to go. And I guess I respect that. You have to respect that opinion based on what we saw at ECT. But if you like actually talking about balance, right? It's supposed to be somewhere in the middle. And then you have Lao cameo who got nerfed by like maybe a second and a half cooldown. Man, Franco, please take it
Oh
away.
man. Yeah, like they obviously gave him what I'm now calling the Cyrax treatment. Uh they made his ambush horizontal chopper a full cameo bar, which in my opinion that's like the worst thing to do, because if you make it a full cameo bar, then you're locked out of using other cameo attacks until you at least get half your bar back. And if you get half your bar back, you're just limited to the half bar cameo attacks, which most of the time, if you're using half a bar now with Cyrax, it's just going to be for net, and you're just really just using net to hopefully fish for a land on your opponent. Like you just hope and pray that net lands. And if you use the vertical chopper for like extra damage or combo potential, but yeah, they didn't do anything to Cyrax to compensate the heavy nerfs he received. Like they didn't make net come out faster, or they didn't make the bomb setups like better. They just nerfed him and only nerfed him, and now he's just left with like his forward throw meter burn launcher, and horizontal chopper is still good, but like it's just, I wish they would have just made it to where instead of having like an 8-second cooldown and being half a cameo bar, it should have had like a 13-second cooldown. So if you use it twice, then you're going to be waiting a long time, because using it once around just doesn't feel good. It's like you barely get to use the character.
Well, I think you're the best player in this chat by far. Like, what do you think the character? Your hot take, your initial impression, whatever. What do you rank the Cyrax cameo in comparison, in contrast to all the other cameos in the game right now?
Post patch Cyrax, I'd probably put like, I haven't really thought about a tier list since the patch just yet.
No, I understand. I'm kind of putting you on the
But
spot, but I think you understand the game very, very well. So I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
I would say probably like mid tier now. Uh like I think Sub-Zero cameo's better. Like I know Sub-Zero is like a counter pick cameo. He's kind of niche. I think Sector is better. Striker. Kung Lao is obviously in a tier of his own right now. Um, yeah, I think Johnny probably is best with Cyrax. Like, but like you can't just slap Cyrax on any character anymore like you could before for the chopper assist. And Raiden I think could still go well with Cyrax, but I know people are
Well,
transitioning.
people, yeah, aren't they using Kano now? What they're doing is, and Tom's not gonna like this. They're using Storm Cell into the ball, which I think also jails and might be plus anyway. So, but to go again back to Tom's point, it's like if that was a problem, why wouldn't you address that specific scenario individually instead of?
Yes,
I know,
yeah,
like so, like I know Scorpion Brothers, they're pissed off because Cyrax was their only like they have no mids. The teleport is kind of slow. But now they have no, they can't do the stupid multiple thing, whatever that move is called, into the Cyrax assist. So they got hurt bad. So I know they're not very happy. So I think in some strange way, a couple of characters like took a massive hit. And I know I talked to Rio. He was also like, man, Havoc with Cyrax is actually like good. He's viable. But now it's different,
same
right?
with Rain. Yeah, Rain, he's bottom one in my opinion now after the nerfs.
Ooh,
For
I don't know
Cyrax.
about that.
That is a controversial statement, Franco.
Look,
Well, he was carried hardcore by Cyrax in my opinion. That's like
but I mean,
Cyrax is like
look, I was the first one to say,
Cyrax.
look, Rain is,
He
look,
was
I have to
99%
comment on this.
of
I have
that
to comment on this.
character.
Look, Rain, I've criticized this. Rain pre-patch with Cyrax was like a top 3 character. I mean, I was 100% wrong with that. Like, because, and I want Tom to comment on this. The reason he was so good, and obviously, I don't think I need to explain too much because I'm sure most of you watched ECT. Armored launchers. I mean, it's just Rain had access to armored launcher nonstop. Block the overhead. You better guess again because if you try to do down 1, interrupt me, you're gonna get launched. Down 3. If you retaliate, you're gonna get launched. So, and of course, he built meter like a motherfucker. So it was nonstop armored launcher, armored launcher, armored launcher, armored launcher. Tom.
Yeah, so in the beta, I actually made a video about this, and at that time, only Sub-Zero slide armor and the Sonya really gave a launcher. And I said, there's a lot of cameos. They're going to be, God knows what they're going to do. And, we're going to have probably situations where armor moves become launchers and they're plus frames and whatever. And I said, one thing we've learned from MK9 and MKX, people will say, oh, it's resource, the cameo and the bar and the... But we've learned it doesn't matter how much resource they spend. Safe armored launchers are not good. I don't care if they cost resource. We've always made that argument, and then it's always come back to, yeah, we were wrong. And also, what it really did was, it was like, it ruined the poke meta. Down 1 into or string, and you go to take your turn, armor into Cyrax, into my turn again, and it was just like. It was like, well, when is it my turn? And it was you saw that quite a lot, not just from Sonic Vox, but from pretty much everyone that used that character. That really is what made Rain, a plus frame armored launcher. I feel like when you say it in this community, people kind of like, so what? Just one move, right? But a plus frame armored launcher is probably one of the most devastating things you can ever have in the history of fighting games. It's so rare that you almost never see it. And MK1 had several of them. So it just kind of goes to speak on just, what kind of a powerful tool that is, which is why it was so dominant.
Hey, plus armor, like you wouldn't know anything about that, would you?
Well, that's what I mean. Like when people say Rain, guys, the character, and it was funny. I'm gonna tell this quick story. So I was like, I finally saw the light that one night. I was like, oh my god, this is actually fun. This is like Tremor. I'm like,
Yes.
it's like Tremor, bro. And then Tom was like, hey, Dave, patch just came out, bro. Cyrax got nerfed. I'm like, damn it. I just had the most fun I ever had with the game, obviously for all the wrong reasons. So it's ironic that the character kind of played like Tremor, right? You poke, and then if people try to retaliate, you get your turn back. And what was also broken, by the way, and this is maybe less conspicuous, is the fact that, like, what Sonic Fox was using was, so they would do like down 3 into the geyser, which jailed, and then call Cyrax. So you have like a extremely oppressive mid-range poke that chipped like crazy, and then it also left you plus, right? So it was. I'm like, why am I winning? And then I really thought about it. It's like, okay, I get it now. I get it. So the character, like, on stream, Stephanie said that the Train played like a premier zoner, but ironically, not at all. Like the character was like Tremor, right? So it was just armor nonstop. But speaking of armor, there's still that aspect of the game, and now it's Kung Lao doing it for 33 and a half, I think, percent. That's gotta be one of the most powerful things in the game right now. I'm talking about Kung Lao, back forward 2, meter burn, enhanced whatever into the Goro assist. That has to be one of the most powerful things in the game, right?
And I
Yes.
think. Oh, go ahead, Franco.
Oh no, I was just saying yes, like answering his question.
Yeah, and to me, this is going to be one of the trickiest things with this game. I mean, I said it like even when we were in beta. I was looking at the way that things are laid out with the cameos and thinking, Man, I'm so happy that am not the person who has to balance this game, because here's the thing, right? If we talk about what we were talking about earlier, which is okay, well, why don't we just buff all the other cameo attacks? The thing is, you're on a razor's edge between something being legit and giving something to one character who's already good that puts them over the edge. And because every character in the game has access to every cameo attack, if you go and buff a ton of cameo attacks, the chances that this gives something to Johnny Cage or Ashra or another character that's good that makes them even better is very high. And so to have to do this in a way where you're trying to make all the cameos useful, but you're also not trying to buff the characters that are already good any more than they already are, I think is a very tricky problem to solve, and I'm really curious to see how they go about it.
Well, I have to ask Tom. Tom, I want to open a can of worms. And by God, Lord Brady has been patient tonight. But I want to ask Tom, save armor. How does that fare against your favorite character that you've been using since pretty much you've been alive in this game?
Um, well, I think if you're a Sub-Zero player throughout history, there's certain legacy things you'll know how to deal with. Armor is just one of the things that Sub-Zero's always had to deal with. It's one of the only options you've had against him. So for that, it's never been a big deal. But when there are armored launchers, and Sub-Zero isn't the only one that deals with this. There are a lot of gaps in this game. I think Crimson alluded to that as well earlier. It's a little harder for him just because of his overall underpowering kit. But it's very irritating. Like, I guess some of the tech, quote unquote, I have against Tanya, but you just basically let her get up for free half the time, put some kind of traps out there in case she wants to check you. But it just like stops so much
No,
of the
could you explain to
match.
the audience when you say, like, what do you mean with Tanya? Because some people may not know because she's not a widely used character.
Well,
Like, what do you mean she's
I mean,
not?
there are a lot of things in the game that I think are fine, like regular special move into Goro or whatever kind of assist. That's just part of the game. But whether you're doing Kung Lao's EX, Shaolin Shimmy, back forward two, or Tanya's, split kicks, armor, and a Goro, it's such a like you can't challenge it. You don't want to. You have to just constantly hunt break armor. Everything you do has to break armor, or you can't do it. Against that, it's just because the damage is good, and why not do it? It's a plus frame armored launcher, plus 12 armored launcher. And like Krim goes, this is really going to be something that it's going to be hard to figure out because how the game, it's easy for us to sit here and say, simple, just do this. But if the game isn't coded that way, they basically have to move the game to a private server, like all the files, and strip it down to what it was and rebuild it to be able to do that. So if it's not something that's already built into the game where they could just say, okay, lock out cameo call on, certain moves, so every armor move, no cameo call. If the game isn't, sure, it's an easy fix, but if the game isn't built that way, they're going to have to find another way to deal with it. And that's really where the challenge is.
Crimson, what do you think, man? I think you have to kind of. I'm not saying you have to patch it, but we know, again, not to beat up that horse, but talk about Tremor again and rain, pre-patch rain. But what do you think? Should something be done, if anything at all?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think those are all good points, and I think some of it comes down to what do people want this game to be, and that has been a really interesting discussion to follow
True.
because I've seen even in the chat here tonight, and also on TYM and across Twitter, like different opinions on what people want. Some people are like, "Yo, give me all the broke stuff that we can have." Like I love it. Just pile it on. Like I want the game to be broke. I want it to be crazy. Insane offense. And other people are like, don't make it too broke. Like tone it down so that we can focus more on neutral, on turn taking, right? Like things that Tom's talking about, right? Not getting into situations where you have no turn because of the mechanics, and that's just it. And you have to hold it every time. And then if you make a wrong decision, you get punished heavily for it, and then you get put in that situation again. So, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of curious to spread that question around to the rest of the panel and see what you guys think. Do you prefer a crazier meta where lots of things are kind of let fly, or do you prefer when it's toned down and focus kind of like more around fundamental play?
I'll answer this very quickly because it's a double-edged sword. Those same people who say, "Yeah, I would love it. I would love it." What they mean is, I would love it as long as I'm the one doing it. If they give it to you, it's not okay anymore. And this is myself and Krim have had that discussion, right? Many times in the past where it's a two-way street. Many people want to be on the recipient of that. They just don't want anyone else to receive, and it doesn't work that way, right? So Krim has always said other games could do that way because those communities accept this is the way I want certain things, you want certain things, and they should all exist simultaneously. On the NetherRealm streets, people will say they want one thing as long as they don't have to deal with something else, So it's like that's really, I would prefer like let it fly, in my opinion. But they would literally riot if that happened. So I think we should probably take the latter.
Franco, what do you think?
Yeah, I feel like it should we should let it rock. Like the crazier things are, the more fun it can be. Like just let every type of archetype exist. Like let zoning exist, let ice clone exist, block pressure, mix ups, whatever it may be.
Honestly, I agree with you in principle, but I think, and maybe I'm an old man sitting on his patio complaining about the younger generation, but I feel like in this day and age, like Tom was saying, you let an ice cone rock. I mean, people are already complaining about Sub-Zero. I just don't see it. I think there has to be some kind of balanced approach from NRS, correct? I mean, I just that's the way the way it's going to be, right? You can't have zoning that's too oppressive. You can't have an ice clone that's too oppressive. And honestly, even the command grabs, right? Like we saw what people said about Kotal Khan and MK11, right? They were also complaining about that. So that's why you only have 2 command grab characters in this game, and they both, by the way, hit high unless you meet a Burn Reiko. So there's going to be a balance,
I don't mean to
but we're
interrupt you really
really
quick. I just want to say one thing.
yeah, please
You
do.
brought up the best possible point. That's really shows what Krim was talking about and what you're talking about. Jackie players. They loved how free and she could be Jackie and defended it. And don't you want stuff like this? You said you wanted stuff to be over the top. And they were okay with it. Attack, 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 attack. But then they attack Kotal. And then when it's Kotal's turn, he's like, well, I'm just going to command throw you every time. So they're like, okay, well, I got to move. And then he's like, well, now I'm going to strike you and kill you. And they're like, this is dumb. They wanted to attack, 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 but then complained about when it's his turn, he throws me. He's a grappler. You can't just attack, attack, attack grapplers like that. So they literally campaigned to get the archetype removed because when it was his turn, it made them not want to attack anymore. And they should be able to do what they want to do with him having no recourse. And that was kind of like where people are. They want to do what they want to do. And then when it's your turn, they say, but you shouldn't be able to do it. That is why I think I agree with you more, Dave, because it just doesn't fly.
Well, Tom, I think you missed the best example of all time, and this is including my zoning brothers and sisters who use Setchion and MK11. So these fools were like, yes, zoning. Oh, by the way, Cage, why are we getting us on by Cage, bro? And then they argue for Cage nerfs on Twitter. It's just amazing to me. So I think people, maybe it's human nature, they're hypocrites, right? They want to do this. They want to spam save armors. They want to spam the zoning. They want to spam all this stuff. But the moment that it's done to them, no.
And
then the game.
Hold on, people don't remember your point. They don't know what your point is. I think they missed it.
Go ahead.
What Dave is trying to say is that Johnny Cage got a when they did the Avalanche variation for Sub-Zero, and they added that third variation, right? Because when the game launched, they only had 2. When Johnny Cage got his third variation, those force balls, the arcing ones, were an outstanding zoning tool, right? But the biggest complainers of it were Cetrion players. And they were on Twitter and everywhere. They were like, she's supposed to be a zoner, but she's getting out-zoned by Johnny Cage. What's going on? He should get toned down. So it was, I guess, again, at Dave's point, they were okay with zoning so long as it was not them getting outzoned. And they would go the whole game telling somebody pick a different character until it was their turn to pick a different character, and they'll say, no, 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 no. Just make it so he can't outzone me. Problem solved. So the community will always go that route. So Krim is 100% right. And I think, to think that times have not changed, and I think they've got to kind of be a little more conscious of that. I think that's really where we are.
There's one thing though that I think can help with this, and that is if you're gonna let the broke stuff rock, make sure that there's some kind of counterplay so that someone who is smart and sees it coming can do something about it. And so to give an example of where I think this was done well in this game, like getting back to mids and highs, right? A lot of characters better normals or faster normals or go-to punishers and things like that are highest. So you saw at ECT there are a lot of moments where someone looked like they were down on their luck, but they made a risky read and a good read and ducked the high, and they were rewarded for it. Even in a situation where you're like, wow, like why would you even think to micro duck there, right? Some people literally turn entire matches around based on that. And that is a good example of giving, a character something that's strong, but also having counterplay. And so I think part of what was depressing people about the Raiden Cyrax thing was that there are not a lot of moments where you're like, oh, okay, if he knew that was coming, he could do something about it and blow that up. It was like, well, this is how it works. He's going to do it every time. It happens on block every time, and you have to hold that, and then the situation resets. So, if they can find ways, whether it's, maybe changing flawless block meta a bit and giving it certain properties that nullify certain things. Like I think they just did that with up block with Astra's forward 2 maybe or something like that in this patch.
Forward 3.
Forward 3, yeah. So I think the more stuff that's like that in the game where if you know it's coming, you can blow that up, then you get both sides, right? You get to do the crazy stuff, but it also rewards smarter players for making good reads.
Well, before I let Franco jump on, I do want to stress that the traditional answer to these, if you want to call it issues, problems, whatever, was character archetypes, right? You don't like zoning, pick an anti-zoning character. You hate rushdown, then you go back pick a zoning. You pick a zoning character. So that was kind of like how MK9 worked, right? That's why Freddy is super strong in that game. Somebody picks smoke, then you're going to be a tremendous advantage, right? But at the same time, somebody picks Cage or Sonya and you pick Freddy or Kenshi, then probably you're going to have the advantage. But people didn't really like that, right? That's why NRS, I believe, and I might be wrong, correct me please, the reason we have variations and cameo is because of two things. One, zoning. Two, ice clone. Because those two things people despise. I know despise a lot of other stuff, command throws, 50-50 mix-ups, but I feel like initially those two gameplay styles is what people rioted against nonstop, and that's why I think we have this new system. I don't think it's a bad system. I think it's maybe a development. It's evolution. Franco, what do you think? You've been playing these games for almost as long as I have.
So like as far as taking away or making archetypes like weaker, like zoning and ice clone, it's messed up because you have characters like, let's just say, pre-patch Raiden and Baraka. People were theory crafting like, hey, if you didn't touch Sub-Zero and nerf him the way that you did, he could have fought against those heavy rush down characters and slowed them down, and like he could have been a contender for like maybe their best, like not counter pick in the sense that Sub would win, but like he wouldn't get steamrolled by like he would be a good pick to defend against those top tiers. But since they lowered Sub-Zero so bad that it's like wasn't even in the question, like we never got to see that play out. That's like something that's like unfortunate.
Well, Tom, what do you think? Tom, I know you want to have a soliloquy about Sub-Zero. Gotta make this
No,
happen.
I mean, I guess when it comes to archetypes, I think They kind of Raiko's a good one. Like, is he a grappler or is he got some zoning ability? You know, what I mean, like, he's kind of like walks in between the two worlds. Um, whether you're a zoner or like Sub Zero, who's kind of Sub Zero's kind of always been an in between character where he's a trapper but also with defensive abilities. I do agree with Franco. Like sometimes that you could, even if he wasn't like the best, he could have been a good option against those characters. But I really think there are two things that exist when it comes to archetypes. There is stuff that's unfair or like whatever, and stuff that is just annoying, and people oftentimes confuse the two. And annoying has actually been everything's annoying to somebody else, right? That's what people don't realize. You know what I mean? Somebody zoning or running away is annoying to some people. People doing command grab loops over and over and over again are annoying to other people. Non-stop rushdowns annoying to somebody else. Sento's annoying to somebody else, where somebody else might be like, yeah, that was hype, even though they lost, right? It's different stuff. I think the only thing that NRS would ever be able to do is just say, screw it, we're going back to archetypes, and just put their fingers in their ears and just say, bad news. This is the way it is, which I don't know what they're ever going to do. I just don't think that archetypes can survive anymore. I just think that there are clear things that people are willing to accept and things that they're not. And I think NRS needs to kind of take those characters that would normally play a certain way and say, okay, people are not okay with us giving them this, even though we still want to give it to them. So how can we give it to them a little bit and then give them something else to kind of keep a more complete kit without overdoing it in one aspect or another?
And it's hard to do it right, because the thing is, if you make really hard archetypes where characters are like, this character plays this way and that's it, you gotta deal with the matchups that come with them. And most people who play those characters do not want to deal with all the bad matchups that come up when there's an archetype mismatch, right? If you're Lex and you got to play against that Sinestro player, people hate that. And the thing is, then they're trying to figure out, all right, how can you buff my character so that I'm still good against Sinestro, but I can also do everything else that I do? And that's really hard to do. So I think, like Tom said, it's more of an issue of people deciding what they want. Do you want a game where characters are more polarized, but then you also might have a ton of bad matchups that you have to hold and you have to counterpick? Or do you want a game where you can play your character against pretty much the cast and you're still where you are against the in the tier list, but there aren't a lot of matchups that it's like you lose at the character select screen? And you can see even in like Street Fighter 6, it's kind of murky, right? And it has been for a while. You have these characters like Guile and JP that can zone and stuff like that, but they also have very good mid-range buttons, so you have to respect them in footsie range and closer up as well. Part of why those characters are as good as they are. So yeah, it's a really hard problem to solve and to give everybody what they want.
That's a
Somebody
great
asked,
point. Yeah, that's
oh,
a
go
great
ahead,
point.
Dave.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I may say, like when we really talk about zoning, it's not just the zone. When we talk about rushdown, it's not just the rushdown, right? Like Batgirl had a freaking teleport that in Injustice One that literally recovered instantly on whiff, right? So you kind of have to just sit there and try to block it, but then when you block it, she's jumping, she's trying to get in, right? So it's not just her rushdown and her 50-50 mixes, which were already crazy. It's the fact that she pretty much is also arguably the best mobility character in the game, aside from maybe Martian Manhunter, right? But yet on the other token, right, you have Sinestro, who's supposed to be a zoning character. He has one of the best vortexes in the game, right? So it's never like one or the other, right? We have to acknowledge that and keep it honest with the audience, right? It's like, yeah, these characters can also. It's like, yeah, they have some of the best zoning in the game, but they also probably also have something else that's also the best in the game that has nothing to do with zoning, right? Zod is another example. Obviously, Aquaman, right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you just take Injustice One as an example, so it's like really not just one thing. It's probably also like another thing. And I know people at the beginning of the podcast wanted me to rant about the zoning in this game, but honestly, I think with Baraka and Raiden nerfed, I think, look, I don't like it doesn't have the M to Dave zoning staff of improved, but I think it's okay. Like, it's okay. I think Liu Kang's strong. He's partially zoning. arguably has the best zoning in the game, in my opinion. And then Shang Tsung, I think, is strong. Reiko is very good. Astra is a mid-range zoning character, maybe someone like kind of like an offensive set shot. So I don't think I'm gonna. I don't think I'm gonna rant about it. I think it's for what it is in the modern era. I think it's okay. Franco, you agree?
Yeah. Just let them archetypes roll, like and I mean, I know it sounds broken, like to just let the shackles loose and like don't restrict anybody's play styles, because like it just it makes like it doesn't make sense to me, like why you would restrict like you know certain play styles but yet let like other play styles. Like I know it's not always fun to play against, but you know it's just that's literally a part of video games, like um even outside video games, that's just part of life. There's just gonna be stuff that you deal with, and I know it's taking things a little deeper than outside the game, but it's just I feel like that's just a common thing that us as people deal with. We're just talking about it from a video game sense. I know you're talking about with Baraka and Raiden getting nerfed, like zoning kind of indirectly got a little better, but with the new patch came flawless blocking, which nerfed zoning, which
That is, yeah,
I think is being
yeah.
overlooked right
That
now.
is a major, yeah. So for people who don't know, so when you flawless block something, if your opponent flawless blocks something, you don't get meter, right? That's how it works. It's probably it was intended for like the Cyrax stuff, right? The Raiden stuff, some of the Baraka stuff, right? Like just doing these long strings or these long special moves, right? That have a lot of hits in them, to stop you from building too much meter, right? But indirectly, yes, it did nerf like Reiko for sure, because he has one of the best projectiles in the game. So that was kind of like an indirect nerf. But again, if you look at the currently what most people suspect at the top five, I think probably Liu Kang is somewhere up there, and I think he has the best. It's kind of like we talk about, like he has some of the best zoning, but at the same time, he comes in close. He has very very strong normals. He has people obviously pair him with Kung Lao, so you have back throw the juggles. So it's kind of like what zoning used to be to a lesser extent. Yet he also has some strong offensive options, and I think if that's what the game is, I think it's okay. And then maybe on the other side, maybe like you have a mid-range character like Astra. She's very very strong. Her damage didn't get touched at all, so she's still like 44% over half screen normal for some reason. She's, by the way, my main character. I'm not complaining about her, but so I think for what it is, the zoning in this game, it works. It affects matchups. It got to some extent indirectly buffed thanks to Raiden and Baraka being nerfed because they did so much damage. Zoning was not worth it. Um, I think it's okay. Tom?
The zoning, I think, is like you said, it's never going to be back to be power zoning. Like the days of classic Sagat or MK9 style of zoning. Those are long gone, right? It's just a different time. Uh, and I still even think for Ice Clone, like those days are gone. Even though people kind of have the wrong image of him, it's kind of like revisionist history. Anyone that ever fought against it in MK9 knows it wasn't him hiding behind it, because they were just zoning him. I had to go forward. But that's kind of like the public image. So, like, I understand people don't want to deal with that. But I feel like like I said, there are just ways to touch those characters to it. Like, and Krim has always said over the years, like, hey, that kind of stuff is no longer acceptable. But they could, you know, they don't have to put characters in the ground, so to speak, which they haven't done yet. But to say, hey, zoning is better, we'll just remove the other character tools, right? It's like you should maybe take a character, give them moderate zoning, but give them something else that also makes it maybe a little easier for them to get away. This way they can do it more without making it actually be as obnoxious. You see what I'm saying? Uh, it's things like that. There are things that they could do to Sub-Zero without ever touching the clone. There are things they could do to Scorpion without. Scorpion's also been a character who, outside of MKX, where nobody plays defense, he's also been a little lame as a character, in almost every game. Just his archetype is kind of lame as well. they could do things to him that affect other parts of his game. Could give him a better offensive game plan that has nothing to do with Cyrax. There are things that they can do, whether to still keep certain archetypes but not make them as obnoxious. And I don't know. I'm just like I said. I think where they go with the actual first balance patch says it all. So hopefully it's not last character standing, last cameo standing. I do feel like did they in some way were thinking, okay, well maybe if you zone plus cameo, will it be a little too much? If you do this plus cameo, will it be a little too much? So I do think in certain situations they erred on the side of caution. But overall, I think where they go with it from here, I do think the cameo system still has some of the flaws of the variation system, which maybe you want to address this as well, Dave. I think and I hope they don't make the same mistakes going forward. You have just some characters where they say, okay, well, the variation moves could be a little too much. So let's kind of tone down the base kit. Let's err on the side of caution. And some characters, they say, give him everything and then give him variation moves, So like you have more complete characters plus cameo. That was a problem. And then you have characters who can't use the cameos as much. So they say, okay, well, if I can't use any cameo, I'm either going to go Kung Lao, possibly Striker, or Serena. You have your default no synergy with anything cameos, which are usually those three, who also happen to work well with very good characters. And then Cyrax also would go with them as well, Goro, etc. So like I said, the first balance patch is really going to show where things are. And I really hope that they just say, hey, let's kind of hand in hand. Let's up the power a little bit so things can still be a little crazy, but maybe not obnoxious. And then you'll still have your good neutral, your good stuff, but you'll also still have some of the like more overpowered stuff as well.
Well, a wise man being in this call once said, Dave, you fool, it's the top tiers. The cameos are kind of like they're complementary. They just, like Tom said, they just do what they do on top of they have extra moves, right? Whereas the low tiers, they kind of have to cover their weaknesses with with the cameos. That's kind of what King Jr. was telling me. Frank, why don't you comment on
And by
that?
the way, let me just add one more saying to that. The
Yeah.
reason why zoning, clone, etc., archetypes or whatever, those generally make you block an approach. People didn't pay $109 to block. That's probably
Franco, you want to make a comment about the complementary stuff that you were telling me like a couple of weeks ago?
Like with the cameos and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
like all the
pair 'em
good,
up.
like how the top tiers, they're pretty much, like not all of them, right? Because I think Ray maybe pre-patch was an exception, but like Raiden can pretty much do everything. He has a teleport, he has a decent fireball, he has good strings. Almost none of them have gaps. So like when he picks a cameo, it's like, yeah, I'm a strong character and I have these extra moves now that I can just spam, right?
Yeah,
Whereas if
that's
you're
the
Scorpion,
cool
it's a
part.
completely different ball game. Right? If you Sub-Zero, it's a completely different ball game.
Yeah, that was the cool part about cameos, and like I hope they continue to do that. Like instead of taking away cameos like Cyrax, because like it's not like what Tom said earlier. It's not like the variation system where you have a piece of a character scattered through three variations. Like you can use any cameo with any character, and you can have those extra options to anybody. Like if you're having a hard time against zoners, you can get cameo Sub-Zero and pick the ice armor. And if you need like a summon reversal to get out of block pressure or something, you can use Serena, or pre-patch Lao Spin was really good before they made it not launch anymore. Um, the Yeah, so the cameos really just only add to the existing power level of a character, which is awesome.
And I think this is when I was talking about like things that are tricky to get right. I think this is one of them because it's hard. Like Somebody in the chat was asking about like being able to combo off a grab and things like that. And that's one of those things where, first of all, I'm for that kind of dirt. I think it's great. I think it's kind of hype. It sort of opens up people's offense. But at the same time, if you have a character that's really strong and you have to work to get in on them, and then you get in on them, and then they throw you, and then they use the cameo to convert that throw into 50%, right? It's also frustrating at the same time. And so I think figuring out how to give creativity and synergy is tough, right? If you balance for synergy, then what you end up with is like the Rain situation where you have a character that needs a cameo to be completed, and it's pretty much you got to use that cameo if you want to be at your best, and that's it. If you balance for creativity, then everyone has a lot of different options. Things are more general, but if the best characters in the game get to be as creative as the worst characters in the game, right? Then they have all this like extra stuff to use. With that said, there are some pretty hard archetypes in the game. One example is that doesn't get talked about a lot is Natara, right? Natara has no options to sit there at full screen and zone and counter zone and do all that stuff, right? She is built around air mobility, and that is it. She lives and dies by her ability to outmaneuver her opponent. And if that doesn't work, there's pretty much nothing else. So that is an example of a hard archetype. And I think it can be tricky to kind of balance those characters out. If you saw Deoxys at ECT trying his best to be extremely patient, and really the Lao hat is the thing that opened up his offense, right? Because when he finally got in, having the ability to set up a low and then come in with the air mobility is pretty much the Axe's main way of opening people up. If you take that away, right, even if it helps balance out some other characters, then Natara loses the one thing that gave her, like an ability to open better players who are not faked out by the air mobility up. So I just think this stuff is hard. I'm curious to see
Yeah,
how
but
they
then
go
you give it
about
to
it.
Cage, and everything is plus. And when he's not plus, he's plus. And when he is plus, he's plus.
Exactly.
So then it's
Exactly.
like, but then you say, hey, well, there are some archetypes that could counter Cage. Yeah, but when I'm not Cage, I don't like dealing with it. So, it's okay. Just don't put those in the game. And it's like, well, that's, it's a real, I agree. Like, Lao Hat is kind of a default thing, right? Set up Lao Hat, try to come in, make some overhead or low situation, and that works, But I mean, then you do some other characters, and it's like, well, now they get in for free because of that same thing that lets Natara get in or someone else get in. Only now everything they do plus 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 plus. It's like when is it my turn? And it's like it's a bit much. And it's fine, if you want to do that, but you can't have it where like Natara lives and dies by it, for example. So without that, good luck. And then another character is like, oh, I do it anyway, but yeah, thanks, Or even like, Kenshi, like 15 seconds of Sento is a bit much. I think that's what tells you the armored launchers, safe armored launchers a la Cyrax, cameo were so dominant. People forgot that Sento's on the screen for 15 seconds. Like, that just shows, I guess, how powerful that other tactic was. But just in general, there's still a lot of stuff in the game that kind of doesn't get talked about as much anymore. Because now, like, the new public enemy is Johnny Cage and Kung Lao. But I mean, there's still a lot of stuff in there. And I don't think the right answer is go in there and, put Sento in the floor. Then we make our way back to Cage, put him in the floor. Let's put Kung Lao in the floor too, because then we're going back to, what people said they didn't want in MK11. So I don't know. I would love to see the power level raised overall. Without everybody just having to say, "Oh, here's what we do: put low hat on the screen and then come in." Like I would like to see
a lot of the time, a lot of the characters kind of like, it's not as impressive as the Cyrax stuff or statistically prevalent as the Cyrax stuff, but it's obviously like you think about Liu Kang, right? Kung Lao is obviously his best cameo. Cage looks like it's Kung Lao. I use Reiko with Kung Lao, which is very what most players, especially cat, would consider a toxic combination because you combine arguably the best projectile in the game with the best cameo, with the best cameo projectile in the game by far, best cameo move in general, right? So like you have to get in, it can be very, very frustrating. Even I mean, I'm used to it, but even fighting against it's not easy. Like, it's can be very, very annoying. So but I want to make a comment about. So for me, the way I look at the game is like, yeah, Baraka has all this stuff, especially pre-patch, right? Or Raiden. It's like, man, I wish I really could zone these characters. But like Tom said, like in this game with Cage, you really like it's hard. Like I fought Franco's Cage, and it's like he's just walking forward and just kind of like doing what I fought Franco pre-patch. He's kind of doing whatever the hell he wants. Like, how do I stop it? And I was using Ashraf, by the way. And I know I'm not at his level, but it's like, man, oh man, I wish I could just like spike him or something, or Zodball, and put a Zodball and like make him slow down, right? That's the way my mind was. It's like, oh, why not? It's not that Cage is this OP rushdown character. He was much, 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 much more impressive in MK9 than he probably ever will be in this game. But look, Crimson is right. There has to be a balance, right? There has to be a balance because the way we used to play games, Tom and I, Crimson 20 years ago, it's not the way you play games right now, right? It's not visually appealing to look at somebody spamming projectiles or keeping people out for 20, 30 seconds. We started with Injustice 2, right? We know that it doesn't work. It doesn't build a fan base. Casual gamers are discouraged. They never take the next step to learn how to fight that. So I think we have to look at kind of a game, and I think they got this right, kind of a game like we have right now, right? A game that has depth, that has execution, zoning is relevant but not oppressive, etc., etc. Do you guys agree? Crimson?
I mean, yeah,
Yeah, I
I would
mean,
agree. Yeah.
I agree, and I think it. We have to give credit to the fact that balancing a modern fighting game. I mean, really balancing fight. In the old days, it was like they didn't have to be balanced, right? Because you played what you had, and that was it. But I think, especially in the modern era, like balancing a fighting game so that everyone is satisfied, it's a really hard job. So credit to the people who have to do that because I think it's always tricky. Even games Strive is a perfect example. When Strive came out, everyone was like, "Yo, every character is so amazing, and you can do what you want to do, and this is my true love, right?" And then a couple months later, people were like, "This is broken, that's broken." So I think it's a tough thing to do, and I think it's gonna be fun seeing how they choose to do it. I also think maybe Franco mentioned that a bit, or someone in the chat mentioned it too, but they usually get creative with the DLC, and that's been the thing for at least since MK9, right? They say, okay, we have the cast, now we're gonna introduce some DLC that play totally different, and that's cool. So we might see something totally new with the cameos or with the new characters and stuff like that. So it's gonna be interesting to watch.
Franco, any thoughts on this before I let Tom close it out? Because I think we're about an hour and a half in or so. It's been a very healthy discussion. Franco, your last comments before I let Tom close it out. And we'll remain on because we still have a lot of people watching, so we'll remain on this channel. Maybe get a, after our discussion going, if you will. Franco, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I agree with going down that, like, I would rather things get buffed than nerfed. Like, we wouldn't want to revisit previous mistakes, like toning things down like we did in MK11. Like, you don't want to go through the cycle of, oh, let's just nerf the next top tier, because right now everybody's public number one enemy is Johnny Cage, and if not Johnny, then Tenchi. Obviously, you don't want to nerf those characters to the ground though, and then just nerf who comes after them, because then you're just going to run out of characters that are going to be interesting and fun because they're so grounded from the nerfs. So yeah, I think going, like, a lot of people are pretty vocal about this patch, mostly disappointed from, or I shouldn't say mostly disappointed, but there's definitely a lot of pro players, including Sonic, disappointed at the patch, saying that taking away freedom is not really good in their opinion. Adding more restrictions and all these other changes, Hayate, Scar. I agree with that stuff. So hopefully going forward, the patches are not severe nerfs, and we're just mainly either adding to the game or just slightly nerfing things to where they're like more tame and less hectic, like, but slight changes, like, at best. I'd rather just keep the power level either how it is or tone things up for the characters that are a little weaker.
Well, I wanna before I let Tom close it out, it's his YouTube channel, and I want to thank my close friends, King Jr., Crimson, and Tom Brady for making this happen. Guys, we do miss Rio. Again, Rio could not be here today because he is in a unique work schedule. We can't do the podcast at 5 a.m., sorry. But so that's why, we try to make this guys for you happen. There was some requests on Twitter and test your might. So thank you so much for listening. We'll keep the discussion going, so please remain in the chat. But I want to have the opportunity for Tom's channel. He should do one closing it out. Tom,
Yeah,
go
I
ahead,
just want
please.
to quickly piggyback off something that Franco said. And I know Diddle brought it up in the chat here as well. DLCs, etc. There's just a few things that I really want to see in this balance patch to really show, like, hey, this is going to be the best game ever. For one, I don't want to see what I call the MKX death sentence, which is where the DLC coming in and just being so obviously overpowered, and then NRS has the knee-jerk reaction. I'll never forget that moment in MKX. We had a great set: Sonic Fox, Tekken Master, Aaron Black versus Kodal. Everybody remembers watching it. The chat was into it. Like, I've never seen the chat like into like that before. And then in the last game, Sonic pulls out Alien and crushes him, and the chat was like, oh, never mind. He could have just beat him 3-0 easy. NRS does it again. Another character that they know is obviously dumb that they put in a game as DLC. And the backlash was so bad, NRS overhauled the game 2 years after its launch, which has never happened and will never happen again. I don't want to see that. So I want them to establish a baseline power level and fit the DLC into that, as opposed to constantly introducing a new power level. And then, well, what do? Do we take power from the DLC? Do we raise this? I don't want to see a reshifting of power and balance every single character that gets released. I think it's very, very important for NRS to assist to just show a baseline of characters and cameos in the next balance patch, and then build the rest of the game around that, as opposed to constantly shifting next man up, next man down for the life of the game. That has never worked. And I just hope that just for the life and the positivity of this game, because right now everybody is very high on it. They're very positive about it. And I just really want to see that continue. But as always, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. M2 Dave, Crimson Shadow, Burrito Voorhees. And you guys listening on YouTube, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thanks for listening. And for those in the chat, we're going to continue this in a just kind of like a discussion. Thanks for watching, everyone.